So hey everybody, welcome to this edition of eChannelNews. We've got Rob Scott of Scott & Scott. They're a law firm and they specialize in the managed services sector. So Rob, first of all, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
All right. So Rob, tell me a bit about what is happening in the managed services space that requires more legal protection.
I think the biggest thing that's happening is more focus on cyber risk and cyber risk transfer, mostly due to regulatory compliance shifts and the increased regulation of managed service providers and their customers, as well as the increased risk in particular related to the use of third-party services. Last summer, Kaseya had a major ransomware incident that I think really shook our industry and certainly caused me to rethink the way we were doing things in terms of representing our clients. But many managed service providers today are having difficulty getting cyber insurance renewals, or their rates are going up substantially, and which is all evidence that there's a market shift, and risk is now a major factor facing MSPs and other channel IT services firms.
I mean, you're spot on. I mean, right now with the risks, it's very complex for insurance companies to wrap their brains around risk, right? They obviously don't want to pay out more than their premiums, right? And once that happens, of course, there's no rules anymore, right? You might not even get insured. So can you give us some examples of some of the things you've done or you've seen that, channel partners, MSPs need to ensure they cross those T's and dot those I's properly before they get in trouble?
Yeah, sure. I think your customer contracts are a critical place to start because that defines the roles and responsibilities between you and your customers, and also should carefully define what happens in the event of an incident. And it should clearly indicate that the MSP is not responsible for failures of third-party services or the criminal acts of third parties. And if you think about it, that and negligent acts by end users, which also should be excluded, are the three biggest categories of risk. And so in our contracts, we make it abundantly clear that the MSP is not responsible, or the service provider is not responsible for any of those things. I think that, coupled with having good insurance for the MSP, which is called Tech E&O or professional liability, as well as requiring the end user to have their own cyber liability insurance, which is known as first-party cyber, are three ways to significantly reduce the legal liability associated with an incident. Of course, the best thing you could do is have appropriate security protocols and solutions in place to avoid incidents in the first place. But what we're seeing now with the threat landscape evolving the way it has, that's not a risk management solution, given the probability that some or many of a service provider's customers will have an incident despite following of best practices.
So, Rob, what do you say to clients? Let's say an end user, goes on to an MSP website and it says, hey, we protect you from cybersecurity attacks, blah, blah, blah. And then they go back and go, well, I got attacked and your website said this, but the contract, I didn't read it properly or whatever. And so is that litigation happening right now where, one party says, hey, it's your fault, that type of thing? And what are you seeing as the outcomes?
Well, it's all across the board. It's all going to come down to what factually transpired. So a forensic review of technically who was at fault, what happened. Then you look at the customer contracts. Is it clear, who's responsible for these things? And yes, this type of litigation has happened. It's significant. And the risk to MSPs, if you don't have the right agreements in place, is that you're going to wind up, even if you win, you're going to lose because you're facing significant litigation that's very distracting, could cause your premiums to go up or render your business uninsurable in the future. And so it's very important that security be taken very seriously, and that the customer contracting process and the risk management decisions about insurance are very carefully considered, because in this environment, you're risking your whole business.
Makes sense. There's some companies who say, well, look, end customers, I really don't want to have that high price cybersecurity thing that you want to sell me. I just want to go for the budget version of this, right? So would you advise MSPs to have a kind of a document that they sign that says, hey, look, I understand the risk, I understand the consequences, and I, absolve you from any kind of problems, and I'm saying that I don't want this, right? As opposed to waiting until, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, so a couple things there. I think that there's a standard below which an MSP should not allow the customer to expose itself. In other words, I recommend that MSPs offer a core level of security for all customers, and then they bundle an advanced cybersecurity or other cybersecurity package that is appropriate for regulated entities or those for whom security is a bigger concern. But I don't think it's a good idea to rest on these types of waivers and have someone that is just completely at risk. As I tell MSPs, that their network is only as strong as its weakest link. But beyond that, our agreements say that the MSP is not obligated to, but if it does make recommendations regarding security and the customer declines, that anything that happens as a result is excluded, that the MSP won't be responsible. And there's considerable movement in the industry toward using risk assessment and assumption of the risk type forms, like you're saying, to drive sales around cybersecurity offerings and make it clear to the customer, these are the things we're recommending in writing. You're either going to accept them, we're going to do them, or you're going to agree in writing to accept the risk. And those programs are being very successful in terms of communicating the gravity of the recommendations to the appropriate people within the organization and the end user, and making the end user understand that these are important things that they need to seriously consider. And if they decline them, there are consequences from a risk and risk transfer perspective. So we're seeing that, and it's working very well.
It just makes a lot of sense, and then you get into the area of, privacy protection, compliance issues, where, if you don't have that done, right, then it's almost like game over, right? So you have to ensure you're compliant, and you have to ensure, otherwise, you're out of business, I guess.
So part of our standard package for customer contracts includes a data processing agreement. And what we do is we work with each client to determine what regulations they're subject to by virtue of where they operate geographically and what vertical segments they operate in. So for example, an MSP that has clients in California, that has some healthcare clients and some financial services firms, needs a data processing agreement that has California CCPA provisions in it, has HIPAA healthcare provisions in it, and has GLBA financial services financial services provisions in it. But we deliver that all in one document. And we recommend that service providers don't consider signing HIPAA agreements or other regulatory documents provided by their customers, but to make a standard form available for any customer that needs it. Because what we've seen is that customers will try to use the regulations as a basis to renegotiate the risk transfer and other provisions that belong in the master.
Interesting. So Rob, tell me how you work with MSPs. So is it like a retainer every month? It's like, how does that work? What does it look like?
So for 15 years, I offered traditional legal services, either hourly or fixed price, to develop customer contracts. Starting in January, we launched a cloud-based contracts as a service platform, which takes the same templates that we've developed over those 15 years, but we now provide those templates to clients on a customized basis, but we host those forms in our cloud. We give the client the ability to call to those documents through hyperlinks that can be contained in their sales or proposal documents. and thereby collapse the sales process and the contracting process into one step. So as soon as their end user signs whatever their stamp proposal or quote is, our engine is incorporated by reference. We provide the hyperlinks to the clients. Those hyperlinks always contain the customer's live documents. And then we have an update service every quarter to make changes. Included in our maintenance and support is a review of any end user customer requests. And what we're finding is that people who adopt our system are seeing a rapid decline in negotiation by end users. And most of the clients are just accepting the sales quotes and proposals without any negotiation of the legal terms and conditions. But if there is any, then we include a review of that as part of our service.
Very cool. So contract as a service. I mean, why wouldn't an MSP adopt this? I mean, can you tell me what the pricing is like roughly?
So we have two models. We have a perpetual plus maintenance model. The licensing and setup for that is between $10,000 and $12,500, and the annual maintenance and support is $2,200 a year. And then we have subscription-based licensing, which is a 3-year commitment at $300 setup and $300 per month.
And that's for as many clients as you want?
Unlimited number of contracts. This is what we're offering is a contract as a service to manage your legal templates for all of your customer contracts. If you've got 5 or 500, it doesn't affect the price.
And God forbid they do get a lawsuit coming up. Are you there to step in and save the day for them? How's that work?
In many instances, our clients are able to sign on with carriers that will honor what's called a choice of counsel endorsement, which means that Scott & Scott is panel counsel for any claims that arise. So I've been hired by insurance carriers to defend my clients in cases where they've been sued in privacy and security related matters. And so, yes, we do privacy and security litigation. We sue end user customers for failure to pay early termination fees. So yes, we are available to handle litigation, including over customer contracts, but not limited to that.
Love the stuff, man, because I mean, every MSP need a lawyer, and what better one they want to have is one who understands contracts, because that's where the Achilles heel is, right? That's where you're gonna get hit the most. And of course, cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, that's where the mines are, aren't they?
The truth of the matter is we have an access problem for MSPs. Mm. If you think there are 40,000 MSPs in the United States, the vast majority of those are SMB focused, small businesses who don't have a relationship with a law firm that specializes in IT, and for whom $12 or $10 or $12,000 is an insurmountable hurdle. So they wind up, pulling things off online, using free templates provided by vendors, and not getting the legal services that they need. So part of my motivation for moving to a cloud-based system was to make this work that I've worked on for the better part of my career available to a larger percentage of the market. And that's why we've come up with this pricing. We think at $300 a month, even the SMB focused, even if you've got 500,000 in revenue, $300 a month is a wise investment to get the broad breadth of both legal and regulatory protection that's afforded by our solution.
Well, it might be as good as, if not better than, the actual insurance policy you buy that may or may not protect you when the time comes, right?
Well, they work hand in hand. They work hand in hand, because what I do is I align the insurance with the contract to close any gap. So whatever the MSP has in terms of insurance indemnities, we write that directly into the customer contract to avoid any gaps. And then, of course, there could be coverage issues. And so we use an alternative formulation in our limitations of liability that allows the end user to access the insurance or a very small percentage of the fees paid. So uncovered claims, the end user has very limited rights, but uncovered claims, if it's covered and the MSP is at fault, we want the end users to be able to access the insurance that's being purchased for their benefit.
This makes a lot of sense and very interesting. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and we'll definitely tell the MSP community about it. I mean, it seems to me, like a no-brainer, right? As for $300 a month, I'm not quite sure how they can get something like this cheaper.
Well, if you think about it, our firm's hourly rate is $600 an hour. So we're delivering a contracts as a service solution for all of the MSP's customer contracting needs for a half an hour of legal services per month.
Makes sense. And the website address is, Rob, is what?
ScottandScottLLP.com.
Can't beat it. There you go. So for you folks out there in channel land, don't pull stuff off the internet and change to a search and replace. Those things are is not for real stuff. So you might get lucky, but you might get unlucky. So get this thing done right, because I think you were spot on here, Rob. A lot of people need to get this done right for a lot of reasons that you mentioned, and I do believe $300 a month seems to me fairly affordable for the ROI you're going to get out of this. I mean, just protecting one hit. You could probably, pay for this. So thanks and all the best. Cheers.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure.